The anime that literally invented drip before fashion was even a concept. A series that walked so your modern shounen could run. But back in the day, Bleach was the undisputed king of vibes. And it all starts with the Agent of the Shinigami arc. A prologue that is basically a how to be a main character tutorial gone horribly wrong. We open in Karakura Town, which is basically the Gotham City of spiritual pests, introducing us to Ichigo Kurosaki, a 15-year-old high schooler with the hair that's the color of a traffic cone and a permanent scowl that screams, "I hate it here." He's not your typical bright-eyed protagonist screaming about dreams. He is a reluctant hero with a massive quiet-quitting energy who just wants to protect his family and sleep, which is honestly the most relatable Gen Z mood board I've ever seen. But the peace is shattered when Rukia Kuchiki, a petite Grim Reaper, breaks into his room and tries to explain the spiritual economy, only for a Hollow, a giant masked monster that looks like it escaped a Slipknot music video, to crash the party and threaten Ichigo's sisters, leading to the moment that changed anime history. Rukia, in a desperate gamble, stabs Ichigo to give him a little bit of power. But Ichigo, being the absolute unit he is, drinks her entire milkshake and accidentally drains all of her Reiatsu, transforming into a Soul Reaper with a sword so comically large that it looks like a texture glitch in a Bethesda game. And then, it happens. The beat drops, and before you know it, we are all singing, "Baby, now you feel like number one." This soundtrack, composed by the legendary Shiro Sagisu, does more heavy lifting for the show's cool factor than the actual animation budget, convincing an entire generation of kids that swinging a kitchen knife around in their living room was the peak of aesthetic excellence. Thus begins the Monster of the Week saga, which is basically a supernatural procedural where Ichigo and Rukia run a two-man extermination business while Rukia lives in his closet like a gremlin and attends his school, leading to hijinks that feel like a fever dream sitcom. But amidst the comedy, the anime starts to introduce the squad, the ride-or-die homies who would follow Ichigo into the gates of hell, starting with Orihime Inoue, the chaotic good waifu who spins leeks and eats bread with red bean paste, whose introduction is surprisingly dark as we watch her get traumatized by her brother turned hollow in a scene that hits you right in the feels with the subtlety of a brick, proving that Bleach was ready to serve emotional damage alongside the action. Then we have Yasutora Chad Sado, a man whose name is literally a meme before memes existed. A Giga Chad so unbothered by the laws of physics that he tanks a falling steel beam on his back and just walks it off like he stepped on a Lego, eventually unlocking an arm that shoots a laser beam because, well, why not? And of course, Uryu Ishida, the Quincy, who enters the lobby with massive hater energy, pushing up his glasses and sewing his clothes while declaring that Shinigami are mid and that he can delete hollows faster than Ichigo, initiating a kill count competition that escalates from friendly rivalry to we accidentally ripped a hole in the sky and summoned a Menos Grande in record time. The appearance of the Menos Grande is the first oh snap moment of the anime, where the aspect ratio feels like it's struggling to contain the sheer size of this Gilliam-class oppression, and watching Ichigo and Uryu coordinate to push it back gives us that classic shonen dopamine hit. But the anime makes sure to remind you that Ichigo has zero technique and is running purely on main character privileges and vibes. However, the tone shifts drastically with the Grand Fisher mini-arc, which stops being fun and games and becomes a therapy session with a sword, revealing that the monster hunting Ichigo is the same one that killed his mother, turning the fight into a rainy, gritty, emotional crash-out, where Ichigo learns that having a big sword doesn't mean anything if you don't have the resolve to use it. A lesson he learns while bleeding out in a graveyard, in a scene that is surprisingly visceral for a show that usually censors blood, marking the transition from urban fantasy romp to serious battle shonen. But the true finale of this prologue, the moment that the tutorial events end and the difficulty spikes to Souls-like, is the arrival of Byakuya Kuchiki and Renji Abarai, two high-ranking Soul Reapers who pull up to Karakura Town with the drip of a runway model and the attitude of a disappointed Asian parent. Renji, with his pineapple hair and tattoos that probably took the animators 3 hours to draw per frame, gives Ichigo the hands, showing us what a real fight looks like. But it's Byakuya who delivers the ultimate reality check. The man stands on a streetlight, scarf flowing in the wind despite there being no wind, and moves so fast that the animation frames literally skip, shattering Ichigo's sword and his ego in a single motion. Ichigo gets caught in 4K, lying on the pavement while Rukia surrenders herself to save him, walking into the light. It's the ultimate L that sets up the greatest comeback arc in history, forcing Ichigo to link up with Kisuke Urahara, the bucket hat-wearing shopkeeper who's definitely the shady NPC that you shouldn't trust but have to undergo a training montage that involves digging his way out of a hole and fighting his own inner demons just to unlock his real sword. This arc, often overshadowed by the Bankai spam that comes later, is the foundation of everything. It established the unique urban meets feudal aesthetic, the banger OST, and the core theme that Bleach isn't just about fighting, it's about protecting your friends with impeccable style, proving that even back in 2004, Ichigo Kurosaki was already standing on business. If the previous arc was the tutorial level where you learned about the controls, the Soul Society arc is the moment when the game developers decided to drop you into a Dark Souls raid boss with 0 healing items and said, "Good luck, have fun," because this isn't just an arc, it is a cultural reset that defined the 2000s. It's a masterpiece of pacing, battles, and plot twists that effectively ruined every other shonen for an entire generation of weebs. We pick up right where we left off, with Ichigo and the squad, consisting of Uryu, the Quincy nerd, Chad, the unbothered king, Orihime, the shield maiden, and Yoruichi, who is currently a cat but is about to break the internet later, invading the afterlife, which turns out to be a feudal Japanese bureaucratic nightmare filled with people who really want to stab them. The invasion starts with a bang, as they literally cannonball through the barrier, only to get separated, turning the arc into a battle royale where every corner hides a captain-level threat. And the first major vibe check comes from Ikkaku Madarame, a bald man with a lucky dance who teaches Ichigo that fighting in Soul Society isn't about protecting people, it's about having fun while trying to murder each other. But the emotional stakes skyrocket when Ichigo gets his run back with Renji Abarai, a fight that transforms Renji from a generic villain into a tragic figure caught in the friend zone of the century. We see his flashbacks, we see his desperation to surpass Byakuya, and when he screams at Ichigo to save Rukia while bleeding out, it's not just a fight, it's a passing of the torch that hits harder than a breakup text. Just when you think that you have room to breathe, the game throws Kenpachi Zaraki at you, a man who wakes up and chooses violence every single day. A captain who wears bells in his hair just to give his enemies a head start because he is physically incapable of finding a challenge. This fight is pure, unadulterated testosterone, a clash where strategy goes out the window in favor of who can hit the other guy harder, culminating in Ichigo finally trusting his sword, Zangetsu, and ending in a double knockout that leaves you questioning if plot armor is actually a tangible substance in the Bleach universe. While Ichigo is busy speedrunning the hospital, the rest of the cast gets their moments to shine. Uryu somehow manages to defeat a captain by literally shredding his own body, and Chad gets one shot by Shunsui Kyoraku just to establish the power ceiling. But everything is leading up to the execution of Rukia Kuchiki on Sakyoku Hill. This is the moment, the climb the tower trope. Ichigo undergoes Bankai training in a cave, beating up a mannequin for 3 days straight, and emerges with a fit that is pure drip. The execution scene is where the anime peaks. A giant firebird is about to incinerate Rukia, and suddenly Ichigo steps in, blocking the force of a million suns with just his sword, destroying the execution stand, and tossing Rukia to Renji like a sack of potatoes. This leads to the main event, Ichigo versus Byakuya. This isn't just a fight, it's a clash of ideologies. The rebel punk versus the aristocratic bootlicker. Byakuya pops his Bankai, filling the screen with millions of cherry blossom blades, and Ichigo responds with the most iconic power-up in anime history, Tensa Zangetsu. He doesn't get a bigger sword, he gets a smaller one. He compresses all of his power into pure speed, putting a katana to Byakuya's throat before the guy can even blink, creating a nothing personnel kid moment that is seared into my retinas. But then, the twist. Ichigo starts losing, and his inner hollow comes out, a screeching, insane version of himself that is brutally turning the tables now, proving that Ichigo isn't winning because he's righteous, he's winning because he's got a monster on a leash. However, just when you think the arc is over, Tite-Kubo pulls out the rug from under the entire world with Sosuke Aizen, the mild-mannered, glasses-wearing captain who died earlier. Yeah, he faked it. He faked everything. He walks into the clearing, slicks his hair back with one hand, instantly transforming from "Hello, sir, nice to meet you," to "Your daughter calls me daddy," and stops Ichigo's theme music with a single finger. Aizen reveals that the entire arc, every fight, every struggle, was just a part of his 5D chess game to steal the Hagyoku hidden inside of Rukia. He one-shots the captains, tanks a spell from a distant giant, and descends into the sky while insulting everyone's intelligence, leaving the Soul Society in shambles and establishing himself as the greatest villain in shonen history. The arc ends not with a total victory, but with the terrifying realization that the real war has just begun, leaving us breathless, hyped, and absolutely convinced that Bleach is the greatest thing to ever happen to our screens. The squad is back in Karakura Town, going to school, pretending that they didn't just overthrow a government in the afterlife, but the vibes are rancid immediately. The sky feels heavy, the background music shifts from triumphant rock to ominous Spanish guitars, and suddenly we have Shinji Hirako, a transfer student with a haircut that should be a felony, and a smile that screams, "I know where you live," pulling up on Ichigo to reveal that he's a Vizard, a Shinigami with a hollow mask. He drops the bomb that Ichigo isn't special, he's just a part of a club that he didn't apply for, and this gaslighting session sets the tone for an arc defined by paranoia and identity crisis. But Shinji is just the appetizer, because Aizen, who is clearly chillin' in Hueco Mundo, sitting on a throne that cost more than the GDP of a small country, decides to send his scouts out. And now we are introduced to the Arankars, hollows that have ripped off their masks to gain Shinigami powers, effectively breaking the power scaling system that we spent 60 episodes learning. Enter Ulquiorra Seifer and Yami Largo, the dynamic duo of Quiet Emo Kid and Angry Thumb. When they touch down in Karakura Town, the disrespect is immediate and catastrophic. Yami literally sucks the souls out of random civilians just to see if they taste good. And when Chad, our unbothered king, tries to step in, Yami dislocates his arm with a casual backhand that makes you physically wince. Orihime tries to help, and Yami swats her like a fly, and this is where the trauma really begins. Ichigo shows up, enraged, activating Bankai, and for a second you think, okay, here we go, main character time, but then the writers hit him with a nerf patch called Inner Hollow. Just as Ichigo goes for the kill, his inner demon decides to grief the game, freezing him in place and allowing Yami to absolutely ragdoll him. It's embarrassing, it's painful, and Ichigo gets beaten down not because he's weak, but because he's broken inside. And the only reason they survive is that Yoruichi and Urahara show up to bail them out, proving that the adults still have to clean up the kids' messes. But the real what the hell moment comes when Grand Fisher, the villain from Season 1, returns as an Arankar seeking revenge, only to run into Isshin Kurosaki? That's right, Ichigo's goofy, poster-collecting dad pulls up in full captain-level Shinigami drip and one-shots the Grand Fisher like he's taken out the trash, revealing that he's been a retired war hero this entire time and effectively breaking the internet before Twitter even existed. But if Ulquiorra was the warning shot, Grimjoe Jaegerjax is the nuclear warhead. This man is the definition of Black Air Force energy. He doesn't wait for orders, he invades Karakura Town with his own squad of goons just because he wants the smoke. The resulting battles are a massacre. Ikaku barely scrapes by with a secret Bankai that breaks apart, which is visually stunning but tactically stressful, and Hitsugaya struggles against a frantic Arankar. But the main event is Grimjoe versus Ichigo. This isn't a fight, it's a violation. Grimjoe catches Ichigo's sword with his bare hand just to show the gap is still there, and proceeds to beat Ichigo into the dirt while laughing maniacally. He kicks him around the park like a soccer ball, mocking his Bankai, mocking his resolve, and basically telling him, you thought you were him, but you're not even close. Ichigo's Getsuga Tensho, his ultimate move, leaves a tiny scar on Grimjoe's chest, and Grimjoe just looks at it like a minor inconvenience. It's a total crash-out moment. Ichigo realizes that he is completely outclassed, and once again, he's saved by the bell, or rather Tosen picking Grimjo up for a timeout, leaving him alive but physically and mentally destroyed. This leads to the depression arc, where Ichigo has to go crawling back to the Vizards, the very people he rejected, begging for help because he's terrified of his own shadow. The training sequence here is pure psychological horror. Ichigo has to fight his inner hollow in his mindscape, while his physical body turns into a monster in the real world, forcing the Vizards to take turns beating him up to keep him from killing everyone. It's a battle of instinct versus logic. His inner hollow, who is honestly the most honest character in the show, tells him, "I don't know about this save the world stuff, I just want to survive," challenging Ichigo's entire worldview. Ichigo eventually asserts dominance, learning to don the mask for a measly 11 seconds, but those 11 seconds represent the shift from Shinigami to hybrid, a necessary evolution to keep up with the power creep. The arc wraps up with the stakes all set. Aizen is building an army to kill God, the Arrancars are coming back, and Ichigo has a ticking clock to master his demons before the Winter War begins. It's dark, it's desperate, and it sets the stage for the invasion of Hueco Mundo, proving that in Bleach, the only way to defeat the monsters is to become one yourself. We are entering the Hueco Mundo arc, which is essentially Soul Society the remix. The color palette has shifted from feudal Japanese wood to endless, depression-inducing white sand. If the previous arc was about Ichigo getting humbled, this arc is about Ichigo standing on business, and it kicks off with the biggest down-bad moment in anime history. Ulquiorra Seifer, the emo Bat King who looks like he cries black tear fluid, pulls up on Orihime in a tunnel between worlds and gives her an ultimatum that is basically, "Come with me or I delete your friends." This leads to the legendary "Goodbye, Halcyon Days" scene, a moment so emotionally devastating that it single-handedly fueled the shipping wars for a decade. Watching Orihime say goodbye to a sleeping Ichigo, confessing that she would fall in love with him in 5 different lifetimes, it's the kind of parasocial heartbreak that hits you right in the meow meow. But the Soul Society, they fumble the bag. They act like absolute fake friends, deciding to leave Orihime on red and assuming she turned traitor because they didn't vibe with her aesthetic, effectively ghosting the rescue mission. But Ichigo, he ain't having it. He looks head Captain Yamamoto in the eye, a man who is literally a nuclear bomb with a beard, and says, "Bet," going rogue to invade the dimension of Hollows himself. And who pulls up with him? Uryu, I'm still a hater Ishida, and Chad, I never speak but I'm always locked in Sato. The squad is back together, walking into the Garganta with the swagger of a hip-hop group dropping the hardest mixtape of 2007. Welcome to Hueco Mundo, a realm that is 90% sand, 10% quartz trees, and 100% bad vibes. The boys land in the desert and immediately pick up a mascot character, Nell, who's a toddler Arrancar with a lisp and a snot bubble, who is actually a former Espada and a certified powerhouse, spoilers but we move, turning the grimdark invasion into a babysitting simulator for 3 episodes. They crash the gates of Las Noches, Aizen's castle, which is so big that it technically has its own weather system, proving that Aizen is compensating for something. The group decides to split up because obviously none of them have ever watched a horror movie, turning the arc into a gauntlet of 1v1s against the Privaron Espada, the boomers of the Arrancar world who got laid off when Aizen hired the new generation. Ichigo fights Dordoni, a man with more style than substance, and we see Ichigo trying to be a nice guy protagonist, refusing to use his Bankai until Dordoni begs him to show him some respect, leading to a wholesome moment of sportsmanship before the Espada gets absolutely cooked by the Exequias, reminding us that Aizen's HR department has a zero-tolerance policy for failure. Meanwhile, Chad finally gets his W. He fights Gantenbane, an afro-wearing Arrancar, and unveils the right arm of the giant and the left arm of the devil, transforming into a walking tank. The art shift here is immaculate. Chad blasts the man through a wall with El Directo, a punch so hard that it sounded like a bass boost gone wrong. And for one glorious moment, the Chad fans were eating good, but then Neutra Gilga happens. The 5th Espada, a man built like a praying mantis with a spoon for a weapon, pulls up and one-shots Chad, leaving him in the dirt. It's a harsh reminder that the power scaling in Las Noches is exponential, and our boys are swimming with the sharks. The fierce fight arc is where the reality of the grind sets in. This is the part of the RPG where you realize that you didn't bring enough potions, your party members are trolling, and the dungeon design is just endless white halls that all look the same, creating a claustrophobic nightmare that tests your sanity just as much as your reflexes. We pick up the controller right as the squad splits up, a tactical decision that has a success rate of absolutely 0% in the history of anime. And suddenly the arc transforms from a rescue mission into a series of 1v1 cage matches that vary wildly between absolute cinema and I want to break my monitor. While Ichigo is busy speed dating the Privarone Spada, we have to talk about the odd couple of the century, Renji Aburai and Uryu Ishida. Renji, a man whose win-loss record is currently fighting for its life, teams up with Uryu, who is essentially the raid leader trying to herd cats, and together they walk into the trap of Zaela Poro Granz, the 8th Espada and a character who is pure, unfiltered nightmare fuel. He's the guy who looks at your build, laughs, and then installs a mod that disables your buttons. The fight kicks off in a room that Zaela Poro has specifically designed to nullify their abilities because he read their wiki pages beforehand. Literally, the man has data on everything. Watching Renji try to swing Zabimaru, only for it to fizzle out, is a level of secondhand embarrassment that hurts my soul. This fight is the definition of hacks. Zaela Poro doesn't fight, he releases his resurrection, Fornicaris, which turns him into a weird flower tentacle monstrosity, and proceeds to unleash the most disrespectful move in the series, the Voodoo Dolls. He creates miniature clones of Renji and Uryu, but instead of stabbing them, he starts destroying their internal organs one by one. It's body horror, it's gross, and it is deeply uncomfortable watching Renji cough up blood because of a pink-haired scientist crushing a chew toy that represents his left kidney. It's the ultimate devs please nerf moment. Uryu tries to big-brain the situation with his Quincy chemistry set, analyzing Ryatsu patterns and pulling a well-actually maneuver to trap Zaela Poro in a massive explosion, which is an incredibly hype moment for exactly 5 seconds, because Zaela Poro actually just eats one of his own minions to heal himself. Yeah, he literally just consumes his own employee to regain HP. That is peak corporate villainy. The despair in this fight is palpable. It drags on with frustration, and it perfectly captures the feelings of fighting a boss with infinite phases who just refuses to die, leaving Renji and Uryu completely cooked, huddled together on the floor, waiting for a miracle or a psychopath captain to save them. Meanwhile, in the spooky Tower of Trauma, Rukia Kuchiki is fighting for her life against Araniro Arureri, the 9th Espada, who is basically a glass jar filled with 2 floating heads and bad vibes. This fight is crucial because it's not physical, it's psychological warfare. Araniro wears the face of Kaien Shiba, Rukia's mentor and the man who she was forced to kill, effectively weaponizing her PTSD. He gaslights her, telling her to kill her friends to atone for her sins, and watching Rukia hesitate, watching her tremble because she can't bring herself to cut the face of the man who she loved, platonically mostly, is gut-wrenching. It's a masterclass of how Bleach uses its fights to explore character trauma rather than just power levels. When Araniro reveals his true form, a grotesque blobfish-looking nightmare, and stabs Rukia through the stomach, it looks like it's over. The screen fades to black, and the music cuts out, and we get a flashback montage that reminds us that the heart isn't just a physical organ, but the bond between people. Rukia, with a hole in her chest, remembers Kaien's teachings and delivers the third dance, Shirafune, a move so elegant and so desperate that it reconstructs her broken sword purely out of spiritual pressure to pierce Araniro's brain tank. It's beautiful, it's tragic, and it ends with Rukia collapsing, victorious but dying, reinforcing the arc's theme that winning in Huecomundo always comes at a devastating cost. But the centerpiece, the moment the budget went into the stratosphere, is the return of the king, Grimjo Jaegerjax. After Ichigo gets humbled, beaten, and traumatized, Grimjo drags Orihime to his cell to heal him because he refuses to fight a weakened opponent. This is the Vegeta mentality on steroids. Grimjo doesn't care about Aizen's plan, he doesn't care about the war, he just wants to prove that he is the apex predator. The fight that ensues is sensory overload. The sound design is crisp, the clashing of steel, the roar of the Ceroblasts, and the animation shifts into a fluid, kinetic style that makes you feel every impact. Grimmjow releases Pantera, transforming into a blue jaguar man with hair that defies gravity even more than usual, and screams about how he'll chew Ichigo up. But this isn't the same Ichigo from the start of the arc. This Ichigo is tired. He's done with the games. And when Grimmjow uses Descaron, creating giant blue claws of energy, Ichigo doesn't dodge, he tanks it. He shatters the attack with his bare hand, and the mask is cracking now, his eyes dead set on victory. It's a clash of philosophies. Grimmjow fights to assert his dominance, to fill the void of loneliness with violence, and Ichigo fights to protect, to shoulder the burden of everyone waiting for him. The final blow isn't a scream of rage, but a silent, decisive strike that cuts through the noise. Ichigo leaves Grimmjow on the sand, not dead, but defeated, closing the book on one of the greatest rivalries in shounen history. The fierce fight arc ends not with a celebration, but with exhaustion, as Ichigo looks up into the sky, realizing that he's beaten the king, but the god of Hueco Aizen, is still waiting, and the raid is far from over. If Grimmjow is the honorable warrior, Neutra is the toxic griefer, who camps the spawn point waiting for you to disconnect. He pulls up on an exhausted Ichigo with a weapon that looks like a giant spoon because apparently he's ready to scoop up the remaining scraps of Ichigo's dignity, and proceeds to absolutely violate the Geneva Convention. Ichigo is running on 1% battery, his mask is broken, his sword is heavy, and Neutra is just laughing, kicking him while he's down, and proving that chivalry in Hueco is dead and buried. It's genuinely hard to watch. It's like watching a pro player smurf in a bronze lobby. But then, Bleach drops one of its most legendary moments. Nell, the toddler with the lisp and the snot bubble, yeah, she's not a toddler. In a transformation sequence that had the entire fandom apologizing for ever calling her annoying, she reveals her true form as Nalil Tu Oderschwank, a former third Espada. And she is, and I cannot stress this enough, absolutely mommy energy. She turns into a centaur night goddess and proceeds to humble Neutra, blitzing him with a lance and proving that she was her all along. It's a hype spike that breaks the ceiling, but because Kubo hates happiness, she turns back into a baby right before delivering the final blow, leaving the squad completely defenseless and staring death in the face. This is the all is lost moment. Renji and Uria are currently being digested by a science experiment, Chad is napping in the dirt, Rukia is bleeding out, and Ichigo is getting pinned down by Neutra's frat boy minion Tesla. It is bleak. It's the game over screen, but then you hear it. The sounds of footsteps, a Reiatsu presence that feels like gravity just increased by 10 times. The captains have arrived, and they didn't just arrive, they pulled up with the exaggerated swagger of a max-level party entering a beginner dungeon. Kenpachi Zurachi, Byakuya Kuchiki, Retsu Onohana, and Mayuri Kurotsuchi land in Hueco, and the vibe shift is instantaneous. The background music shifts from hopeless dread to boss music, but this time the boss is on our team. Kenpachi literally kicks Tesla into the stratosphere, one-shotting a guy who is bullying the protagonist. And the look that Neutra has on her eyes is like a kid waking up on Christmas morning. This is the matchup that we didn't know we needed. The unstoppable object versus the immovable maniac. Kenpachi versus Neutra is not a battle of strategy, it's a battle of durability. It is two tanks standing in the middle of the lane, trading ultimates. Neutra has the hardest skin of all the Espada, and Kenpachi simply does not care. He lets Neutra cut him just to see if it hurts. He laughs when he gets stabbed in the eye. It's pure, unadulterated testosterone. Neutra releases Santa Teresa, growing 6 arms and 6 scythes, turning into a blender of death. And Kenpachi is having the time of his life. But the moment that defines this fight, the moment that became a meme for ages, is Kendo. Kenpachi, a man who has refused to learn a single skill his entire life, reveals that the head captain forced him to learn the ancient art of holding up a sword with 2 hands. Yeah, that's it. That's the power-up. He grips the handle with both hands, swings down, and deletes Neutra from the server. It is hilarious. It's awesome, and it proves that sometimes you don't need a magical nuke, you just need to hit the other guy really, really hard. Neutra dies looking at Nell as a tragic end for a man consumed by inferiority. But honestly, we were too busy cheering for Kenpachi to notice the nuance. Meanwhile, in the Laboratory of Horrors, we have the resolution to the Sayela-Poro fight, and this is where Bleach gets weird. Mayuri Kurotsuchi, the captain of Squad 12, steps in to save Renji and Uryu, and what ensues is a science off. Sayela-Poro thinks that he's the smartest guy in the room because he has voodoo dolls and organ-crushing abilities, but he forgot one thing. Mayuri is not a scientist, he is a madman. Mayuri reveals that he has already replaced all his organs with fake furniture dummy parts because he's paranoid. He counters every single one of Sayela-Poro's abilities with a gadget that he pulled out of his ear, and then he drops the Superman drug. He infects Sayela-Poro with a potion that overclocks his senses so drastically that 1 second feels like 100 years. We watch from Sayela-Poro's POV as Mayuri's sword moves toward his heart in slow motion for what feels like centuries. It's arguably the most cruel, terrifying fate in the series. Mayuri lectures him on perfection while stabbing him, delivering a monologue that deconstructs the very idea of scientific stagnation, cementing himself as the character that you absolutely hate, but definitely want on your side when the chips are down. And let's not forget Byakuya, who finds Zomari Ruro, the 7th Espada, trying to execute an unconscious Rukia. Zomari has the Gemelos Sonido, claiming to be the fastest Espada, and he uses his ability Amor to control Byakuya's limbs. But Zomari made one fatal calculation error. He pointed a sword at Byakuya's pride and his sister. Byakuya cuts his own tendons to stop his limbs from moving because he's just that dramatic, and then he blitzes Zomari so hard that the speed clone concept becomes irrelevant. When Zomari begs for mercy, claiming Byakuya is arrogant, Byakuya hits him with the coldest line in the franchise. "I'm not killing you because you're a Soul Reaper or because of justice. I'm killing you because you pointed your blade at my pride." It is the ultimate mic drop. He disintegrates him, checks on Rukia, and walks away without a wrinkle on his outfit. The arc concludes with the board completely wiped. The Espada are dead, the captains are victorious, and Ichigo is healed up by Unohana, who scares the living daylights out of everyone just by smiling. It looks like a win, but then the sky cracks open. Sasuke Aizen, the man with the plan, appears on the screen like Big Brother and reveals the truth. The invasion of Huecamundo was a trap. He locked 4 captains and Ichigo in the sandbox so that he could invade the real world without interference. He closes the Garganta, trapping our heroes in the desert, and heads to Karakura Town to destroy it and create the Oken. The victory turns into ash in their mouths. They won the battles, but they got outplayed in the war. Aizen leaves them stranded with a GG easy in the chat, shifting the stage to fake Karakura Town for the final showdown, leaving us with the realization that the ride is far from over, and the real monsters have just left the building. Alright, we're interrupting your regularly scheduled Arrancar beatdown to take a trip down memory lane, specifically 110 years into the past, a time when Soul Society was slightly less destroyed, the fashion was slightly more traditional, and Sasuke Aizen was rocking the "trust me, I'm a soft boy librarian" aesthetic that fooled absolutely everyone. This is important, trust me. This is the Turn Back the Pendulum arc, a flashback sequence that usually kills the pacing in other anime, but in Bleach it serves as the Rosetta Stone for the entire series, explaining why half the cast is depressed, why the shopkeeper wears a bucket hat, and why Aizen is the undisputed king of gaslighting. The vibe shift is immediate. We aren't in the desert anymore, we are in Gote 13 during its Attitude Era, and the fan service of seeing the captains in their younger years is immaculate. We see a young Byakuya Kuchiki, who isn't the stoic sculpture of nobility yet, but a hot-headed brat, getting teased by Yoruichi, giving us a hilarious glimpse into the fact that his too-cool-for-school persona is actually a trauma response to getting bullied by a Catwoman for a century. We see Shinsui and Ukitake still being the cool uncles of the group, and we see Vizards, Shinji, Rose, Kensei, Love, and Hiyori back when they were still respectable officers of the law and not living in a warehouse in the human world. But the star of the show is Kisuke Urahara. Before he was the candy shop man with the sandals and the cryptic advice, he was the head jailer of the Maggot's Nest, a prison for people who might commit crimes, which sounds like the plot of Minority Report but with more ninjas. He gets promoted to captain of Squad 12, and his first order of business is to establish the Bureau of Technological Development, recruiting a young Mayuri Kurotsuchi from solitary confinement. Seeing Mayuri without his golden baby makeup, looking like a greasy Discord mod, is genuinely unsettling, but it establishes the chaotic duo of Urahara, the lazy genius, and Mayuri, the unethical genius, that drives the science of the series. Urahara's dynamic with his lieutenant, Hiyori, is pure slapstick comedy, masking the fact that he is secretly the smartest man in the room, constantly inventing things that will either save the world or doom it, specifically a little marble called the Hagyoku. However, the real tension of this arc comes from the man standing in the background, smiling politely and adjusting his glasses, Lieutenant Sosuke Aizen. We, the audience, know he's a monster. We know he's the main villain, but watching him interact with Captain Shinji Hirako is like watching a horror movie where the babysitter invites the killer inside. Shinji thinks he's slick. He keeps Aizen close because he suspects him, thinking, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. But Aizen is playing 5D chess, while Shinji is playing checkers. Aizen knows that Shinji suspects him, and he counts on it, using Shinji's distrust as the perfect cover to run his experiments in the shadows. It's a masterclass in manipulation, as we see Aizen grooming a young Gin Ichimaru, who is already creepy as a child, killing high-ranking officers with a smile, and a young Tosen, establishing the axis of evil triad that would later terrorize the series. The tension builds slowly as souls start disappearing in Rakongai, leaving behind only clothes, a mystery that screams Aizen was here. But the Soul Society is too bureaucratic to notice the wolf in sheep's clothing. Then, the beat drops. The Holification incident. Kensei Mugaruma and Mashiro Kuna are sent to investigate the disappearances and get ambushed. When the rescue team, comprising of Shinji, Hiyori, Love, Rose, and Hachigen, arrives, they find Kensei transformed into a berserk, masked monster. It's a chaotic, visceral scene. Seeing a captain lose his mind and attack his friends is terrifying, and despite their efforts to restrain him, the infection spreads. The lights go out, the unseen blade strikes, and one by one the captains fall. Hiyori gets slashed, Shinji gets incapacitated, and then, out of the mist, walks Aizen. The reveal here is legendary. Shinji, struggling to breathe, asks, "Why?" And Aizen hits him with the coldest explanation in history. "You never trusted me, you never looked at me. And because you never looked at me, you never saw that I wasn't the one walking behind you." He reveals Kyoka Suigetsu, his hypnosis ability, confirming that for months, Shinji has been hanging out with a decoy while the real Aizen was conducting evil science experiments. It is the ultimate ratio. Shinji reveals his entire strategy was exactly what Aizen wanted, and the despair on his face is palpable, as the white substance covers his own face, triggering his holification. Enter the cavalry. Kisuke Urahara and Tessai Tsukabishi, the giant keto master who works in the shop, they arrive just in time to stop Aizen from finishing the job, but they're too late to stop the transformation. This confrontation is the first clash of the Titans, the battle of wits. Aizen doesn't fight, he simply leaves, claiming that he was just passing through, knowing full well that he has framed Urahara perfectly. And this is where the tragedy hits. Urahara uses the Hogyoku to try and stabilize the Vizards, to stop their souls from committing suicide, but he gets caught red-handed by the Central 46. The trial is a kangaroo court. Aizen has used his hypnosis to provide alibis for himself and frame Urahara for the holification experiments. Urahara, the man who tried to save them, is sentenced to be stripped of his powers and exiled. Tessai is sentenced for using forbidden magic. The Vizards are sentenced to death as hollows. It is a complete system failure, a corruption of justice that explains Urahara's cynicism in the future. But then, Yoruichi Shihoin, the goddess of Flash, breaks into the courtroom wearing a stealth outfit that undoubtedly awakens something in half the audience, grabs Urahara and Tessai, and runs away with them. It's the ride-or-die moment of the century. They escape to the world of the living, taking the holified captains with them, and vowing to find a way to reverse the damage. The arc ends with a montage of the pieces falling into place. Aizen taking over Squad 5, smiling with that fake smile, Gin becoming his lieutenant, the Vizards hiding in the shadows of the human world, nursing a century-long grudge, and Urahara opening up his little candy shop, putting on the bucket hat, and preparing for the long game. It recontextualizes everything, every joke that Shinji made, every shady look that Urahara gave, and every move that Aizen made in the Soul Society arc. It all stems from this night of betrayal. It transforms the Vizards from weird side characters to tragic victims of a coup, and it cements Aizen not just as a powerful villain, but as a terrifying sociopath who won the game before anyone else even realized they were playing. The pendulum swings back to the present, and suddenly, the stakes of the upcoming war feel infinitely higher, because we know exactly what happens when you let Sosuke Aizen win. This is the all-out war that we were promised. The moment when the Gotei 13 stops holding back and starts throwing hands. But there's a catch. Aizen, being the toxic strategist he is, trapped the heavy hitters, Ichigo, Kenpachi, Byakuya, and Mayuri, in Huecomundo, leaving the defense of the Earth to the B team and the Old Man Squad. The vibe is tense, the sky is blue, and the Espada have arrived with their fraction to start the 1v1 tournament arc that nobody asked for but everyone needed. We kick things off with the lieutenants, who finally get off the bench to prove that they aren't just background decoration. Izuru Kira fights a birdman named Abirama and reveals that his sword makes things heavy, delivering an execution so cold and emo, raise your head, Wabisuke, that it legally qualifies as a depressive episode. Shuhei Hisagi, a man who's been avoiding using his Shikai for 200 episodes because it looks scary, finally unveils Kazeshini, a pair of scythes that spin like fidget spinners of death, proving that he is in fact the edgiest lieutenant in the roster. But the highlight, and the absolute peak of the anime absurdity, is Yumichika Ayasagawa versus Charlotte Shulorn. This isn't a fight, it's a drag race. It's a pose-off. It's JoJo's Bizarre Adventure infiltrating Bleach. Charlotte, a muscular man in a magical girl outfit with hair that defies physics, challenges Yumichika's beauty, leading to a battle of pure aesthetics that ends with Yumichika sucking his spiritual energy dry because ugly people don't deserve to have Ryatsu. It is magnificent, it is fabulous, and it is the palate cleanser we needed before the horror starts. Because then, the top 3 Espada step up, and the difficulty spikes to expert mode. We have Coyote Stark, the Primera Espada, who is basically the patron saint of quiet quitting. The man just wants to sleep, hates fighting, and is essentially fighting Shunsui Kyoraku, another man who just wants to sleep and drink sake. Their battle is the laziest, most high-level chess match in history, involving children's games like Kageoni, Shadow Tag, where losing means getting stabbed by a shadow. Then there's Tyr Halibal, the third Espada and the Queen of Underboob, who fights Toshiro Hitsugaya in a battle of elements that is visually stunning, but ultimately feels like watching two people throw ice cubes and water balloons at each other, until Hitsugaya freezes her in a giant flower tower, which would be impressive if Aizen didn't just break her out later because he got bored. But the real nightmare fuel is Berrigan Loisenbern, the second Espada and the literal king of Huecomundo. This man's ability is Respira, a fog that ages everything it touches until it rots into dust. It is a one-hit kill cheat code. He rots Soifon's hand off, forcing her to casually order her lieutenant to chop her arm off like it's a hangnail, and tanks a literal nuke to the face without flinching. It takes Hachigen Ushida, the Visored Kido master, to pull a 200 IQ pro game remove by teleporting his own rotting arm inside of Berrigan's stomach to kill him with his own power. It is gruesome, it is metal, and it reminds us that the Espada are actual monsters, not just guys in white suits. Speaking of the Vizards, this is their moment. The 100-year beef is finally on the grill. Shinji Hirako and the gang pull up with the smoothest jazz entrance theme in anime history, donning their masks to save the Gotei 13 from getting wiped. It's the Avengers Assemble moment, but with more teeth and unresolved trauma. Shinji confronts Aizen, but then Aizen stops playing. The moment Sosuke Aizen draws his sword, the genre shifts from battle shonen to slasher horror. He speed blitz everyone. He cuts down Hitsugaya, he cuts down Shunsui, he cuts down Soifon, and he does it without breaking a sweat. And then, the meme happens. The moment that cements Aizen as the greatest troll in fiction. Hitagaya, enraged, finally stabs Aizen through the chest. The music swells, the heroes cheer. "We got him!" shouted everyone, foolishly. And then Ichigo screams from the sidelines, "What are you doing?" The camera pans and the illusion shatters, and we realize Hitagaya didn't stab Aizen, he stabbed Momo Hinamori. Again. The girl who had already been stabbed by Aizen in the Soul Society arc gets stabbed by her own childhood friend because Aizen thought it would be funny. It is the cruelest, most disrespectful prank in history, and Aizen's smirk is audible. He hits them with the, "Since when were you under the impression that I wasn't using Kyoka Suigetsu?" Effectively telling the entire cast and the audience that they've been watching a different show for the last 20 minutes. The despair is absolute. The captains are on the ground, the Vizards are defeated, and the only one left standing is head captain Yamamoto, the old man genocide himself. He steps up, ready to incinerate the world with Enetsu Jigoku, a fire technique so hot that it threatens to burn the fake town and the real town simultaneously. But Aizen, being the Batman of villains with prep time for everything, unveils Wonderweiss, a modified Arrancar whose only purpose in life is to eat fire. Wonderweiss absorbs the flames, nullifying the strongest Shinigami in existence, and Aizen explains that he created a literal special needs child just to counter one old man. It's petty, it's genius, and it forces Yamamoto to use his fists in a double bone strike that shatters Wonderweiss. But the explosion of the released fire nearly kills him. Aizen walks away from the wreckage unscathed, looking bored, and begins his transformation. The Hogyoku starts evolving him, turning him into a white cocooned Mothman that looks like a rejected Power Rangers villain design, but his power is undeniable. Gin Ichimaru, the snake who's been waiting literally a century for this one moment, finally strikes, stabbing Aizen and leaving a piece of his poisoned sword inside of him, in a plot twist that we all saw coming but still hurt, because Gin's "I did it for you, Rangiku" backstory is tragic as hell, but even that fails. Aizen evolves again. He transcends Shinigami and Hollow and becomes a god with a mullet. He leaves the fake Karakura village in ruins, ascending to the real world to create the Oken, leaving Ichigo, who has just arrived from Huecomundo, looking like he hasn't slept in a week, as the only thing standing between Aizen and the total annihilation of reality. The Battle of Karakura ends not with a bang, but with the terrifying realization that the raid boss has entered his final phase, and no one has any mana left. The grand finale of the Arrancar saga, and the climax that took 300 episodes, 5 filler arcs, and enough flashbacks to fill a history textbook to reach. And it kicks off with the fight that literally defined a generation of AMVs, Ichigo vs Ulquiorra, Round 2. We're back in Las Noches, on top of the canopy, and Ulquiorra Seifer, the fourth Espada, decides to show us why he's the cover boy for Emo Despair, by revealing that the power scaling that we thought we understood was actually a lie. He unveils Resurrección Segunda Etapa, a second transformation that Aizen didn't even know about, turning him into a literal bat demon who throws nuclear spears made of green sadness. He doesn't just beat Ichigo, he obliterates him. He puts a hole through Ichigo's chest the size of a dinner plate, a donut moment that predates One Piece and Jujutsu Kaisen, and drops the most nihilistic monologue in history about how hearts don't exist. It is the ultimate "it's so over" moment. Ichigo is dead. Orihime is screaming "Kurosaki-kun" with enough frequency to create a drinking game that would hospitalize you. Uryu is trying his best but getting cooked. But then, the main character plot armor kicks in, but not in the friendship power way, in the "I am going to crash out and kill everyone" way. Ichigo's inner hollow takes the wheel, and we get the Vasto Lord transformation, a horned, long-haired demon with zero humanity and infinite violence. This isn't a fight anymore, it's a nature documentary where a lion mauls a gazelle. Vasto Lord Ichigo grabs Ulquiorra's spear with his bare hand, rips off his arm, and blasts him into the dirt with zero hesitation. It is terrifying, it's glorious, and it ends in tragedy as Ulquiorra, fading into dust, reaches out to Orihime and finally asks, "Are you afraid of me?" Realizing in his final moments that the heart he mocked was real all along. It's a scene so beautiful that it makes grown men cry, closing the book on the best villain in the series. Don't add me, please. Meanwhile, back in the fake Karakura Town, the situation has gone from bad to apocalyptic. We briefly cut to Yami Largo, the guy who claimed to be the Zero Espada, getting absolutely bullied in the background by Byakuya and Kenpachi because nobody, not even the writers, respected his hustle, proving that having a higher number doesn't mean anything if you have zero drip. But the real drama is with Kaname Tosen, the blind justice warrior who decided to reject his humanity to become an ugly fly monster thing because he hates Soul Reapers. He gains his sight only to realize that he is hideous and gets mercy killed by his own friend Komamura and his lieutenant Hisagi in a tragic moment of be careful what you wish for. But let's talk about the snake in the grass, Gin Ichimaru. This man has been playing the long con for 100 years. He waits until Aizen is distracted, touches his sword to bypass the hypnosis, and stabs him through the chest, revealing that his Bankai isn't just fast, it turns into dust that poisons you on a cellular level. We all cheered. We all thought, oh, he did it! The Simp King finally avenged Rangiku! But Aizen is just built different. The Hogyoku evolves him again, reviving him and killing Gin in front of Rangiku, shattering our hearts and proving that in this show, being a good guy with a tragic backstory just means that you die faster. Aizen transforms into a butterfly ghost monster that looks like he just walked out of a failed fashion show, ascending to a level of power where humans can't even sense his Ryatsu anymore because he's existing in a higher dimension of existence. Enter the Dangai. While Aizen is busy terrorizing the real Karakura Town and playing God, Ichigo is in the hyperbolic time chamber between worlds with his dad, Isshin, who casually flicks Aizen and proves that he's the coolest dad in anime. Ichigo spends 3 months inside the precipice world fighting Tensei Zangetsu, who looks like a young Yuba, foreshadowing much, and his inner White Hollow, accepting that they're not enemies but part of himself. He comes out of that tunnel looking different. He's taller, his hair is longer, and he's got a chain wrapped around his arm. The Dangai Ichigo drip is unmatched. He pulls up on Aizen in Karakura Town, and the disrespect is palpable. Aizen is monologuing about how he is a transcendent being, and Ichigo just interrupts him by grabbing him by the face and flying him out of the city code. Aizen evolves into a grotesque hollow monster, firing nukes, and Ichigo just swipes them away with his hand. He doesn't even use spiritual pressure, he just uses pure physical force. Aizen can't sense him, not because Ichigo's weak, but because Ichigo is standing on a plane so high that Aizen can't even comprehend it. It's the ultimate I am him performance. And then, the moment, the climax of 10 years of storytelling. Ichigo whispers, "Final Getsuga Tensho," and he reveals that by becoming the Getsuga itself, he loses all his Shinigami powers. He sacrifices everything, his ability to see ghosts, his connection to Rukia, his identity, for one shot. His hair turns black, and he gets the bandages, the Mugetsu form. The music stops, the sound drops out, and it's silent. He swings his hand down, and the entire screen goes black. The attack is so powerful that it doesn't just cut Aizen, it splits the sky, the ground, and the animation budget in half. Aizen regenerates because, of course he does, but he's weakened enough for Kisuke Urahara, the man with the plan, to activate a Keto Seal that he planted inside another Keto Seal inside a Keto Seal 20 minutes ago. Aizen screams, furious that he lost to a human, yelling at Urahara about the Soul King, revealing that the world is built on a lie. But Urahara just looks over at him with sad eyes as he gets sealed away forever, or so we think. The war is over. The aftermath is the emotional hangover that we weren't ready for. Ichigo's powers are fading. He wakes up surrounded by friends, but he can feel the spiritual world slipping away. The goodbye scene with Rukia is a tearjerker. The one who started it all, the girl who gave him the power to protect, stands in front of him as he slowly loses the ability to see her. He teases her one last time, she smiles, and as she fades into invisibility, he says, "Goodbye, Rukia." It's melancholic, it's perfect, and it feels like the end of a journey. The Arrancar downfall arc isn't just about cool fights, it's about the cost of power and the weight of responsibility. And the fact that Ichigo Kurosaki was willing to give up the thing that made him special just to ensure everyone else could have a tomorrow, it is the peak of Bleach. in the moment where the Big 3 title was undeniably earned, leaving us empty, satisfied, and desperately wondering how they could possibly top this. Spoiler, Fullbring arc happens, but we don't talk about that yet. We pick up with Ichigo Kurosaki, who's now 17, looking like a J.Crew model with that fresh haircut, living a normal life. No ghosts, no hollows, and no screaming bankai at the top of his lungs. He's now just a guy working a part-time job and getting beaten up by random thugs. And let's be real, the depression is loud. The man is suffering from main character withdrawal. He looks at the sky, hoping a monster will appear just so he can feel something again, which is the most relatable gifted kid burnout energy I have ever seen. But then enter Kugo Ginjo, a man wearing a fur collar in the middle of summer and a necklace that screams, "I listen to Nickelback unironically." He runs a secret club called Execution, a group of humans with special powers called Fullbring, which basically means that they can pull the souls out of objects because their moms survived hollow attacks. It's a weird power system, let's be honest. It feels like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure stand abilities got lost and wandered into the wrong anime. We have a guy who controls video games, a girl who traps people in dollhouses, and a bartender who is, well, he's just a bartender. But Ichigo is desperate. He wants his powers back. He wants to protect his friends. So he agrees to join this ragtag group of misfits, training in a literal fish tank and getting turned into a pixelated sprite in a PSP game, desperately trying to unlock a new power that looks like a rejected Power Rangers suit. But the vibes get rancid immediately with the introduction of Shukuro Tsukishima. This man isn't a villain, he is a walking gaslight. His ability, Book of the End, allows him to slice people and insert himself into their pasts. He doesn't just brainwash them, he becomes their best friend, their mentor, and their cousin who helped them move houses. He effectively NTRs Ichigo's entire life. Watching Orihime and Chad, the two people who have ridden with Ichigo since day one, look at Tsukishima with love and adoration while treating Ichigo like a crazy stranger is genuine psychological horror. It's terrifying. Ichigo isn't fighting a monster that he can cut, he's fighting the concept of memory itself. He starts crashing out. He runs to his boss, he runs to his sisters, but Tsukishima is already there, eating dinner, laughing, and being Uncle Tsukishima. Ichigo is isolated, paranoid, and spiraling into a mental breakdown that is painful to watch. The anime animation gets crisp here. The shadows are darker, the expressions are more twisted, selling the idea that Ichigo Kurosaki, the man who defeated gods, is being dismantled by a guy with a bookmark. And then, the betrayal. The plot twist that hits us like a truck. Ichigo finally masters his Fullbring, ready to fight Tsukishima, and who stabs him in the back? Ginjo, the man who trained him, the man who offered him hope. It turns out that Ginjo was a bad guy all along, and Execution was just a farm to ripen Ichigo's power so that Ginjo could steal it. The scene where Ginjo literally sucks the Fullbring out of Ichigo is devastating. Ichigo is powerless again, crying in the rain, screaming at the sky, his face contorted into pure, unfiltered, ugly crying despair. It's the lowest moment in the entire series. The meme potential of his crying face is high, but in the moment, it's just sad. He lost, and the villain won. Tsukishima and Ginjo are laughing at him. It is over. But then, the drip returns. A sword pierces through Ichigo's chest from behind, and he looks back expecting death, but sees her. Rukia Kuchiki, the queen. She's back with a new haircut, a new lieutenant badge, and the same violent affection, kicking him in the face and telling him to stop being a crybaby. But she didn't come alone. The camera pans out to reveal the Gotei 13. Byakuya, Kenpachi, Toshiro, Renji, Ikaku, all standing there like they own the place. It turns out that the old man Yamamoto ordered all the captains to pour their Reitsu into a sword to give Ichigo his powers back. This is the ultimate "we got you" moment. The contrast is beautiful. In the first arc, they wanted to execute him, but now they're breaking the law to restore him. Ichigo explodes with spiritual pressure, his new Soul Reaper form looking sleeker, sharper, and more dangerous than ever. He looks at Ginjo and basically says, "GG, no re." What follows isn't a battle, it's a massacre. The Fullbringers thought that they were hot stuff because they bullied a powerless teenager, but now they're facing Captain-class Shinigami, and the skill gap is hilarious. Kenpachi Zaraki versus Giriko, the clock guy, is the funniest fight in Bleach history. Kiriko monologues about his time tells no lies contract, turning him into a giant green Hulk monster, explaining the complexities of his power. Kenpachi listens, gets bored, and just slices him in half vertically. Yeah, the one shot. He literally didn't ask plus ratioed him with a sword. Then we have Byakuya versus Tsukishima. Tsukishima inserts himself into Byakuya's past, becoming his mentor and learning all his moves. He thinks he's won, and he thinks that Byakuya won't kill his benefactor, but Byakuya? Yeah, no, he's colder than liquid nitrogen. He creates a zone of 1,000 blades and shreds Tsukishima, hitting him with the line, "I don't care if you were my mentor or my brother. You pointed your blade at Ichigo Kurosaki, and for that, you die." It is the ultimate affirmation of Ichigo's status in the Soul Society. Renji hails Jackie into submission, Hitsugaya freezes Yukio into a block of ice, and Ikaku breaks a guy's knuckles just for fun. It's a victory lap for the Gotei 18, proving that these guys are the top dogs for a reason. The finale, Ichigo vs. Ginjo, is a spectacle. The animation budget finally unlocks. We get beam struggles, high-speed movement, and dimension-breaking sword clashes. Ginjo reveals that he was the first substitute Soul Reaper, a dark reflection of what Ichigo could have become if the Soul Society had betrayed him. He tries to sway Ichigo, telling him the badge is a surveillance device, trying to break his trust, but Ichigo has grown. He doesn't care about the politics, he cares about the people. He activates his new Bankai, which looks stunning, and delivers a Getsuga Tensho that creates a cross-shaped explosion visible from space. He kills Ginjo not out of malice, but out of duty. It's a somber victory, as Ichigo picks up Ginjo's body and asks the head captain for permission to bury him in the human world, showing that even after everything, Ichigo is still the empathetic, kind-hearted protector that we met in episode 1. The arc ends with Ichigo returning to Karakura Town, greeted by his friends and family who have their memories restored. He smiles like truly smiles for the first time in ages. He flashes his substitute Soul Reaper badge to the camera, reclaiming his identity. The Lost Agent arc might be controversial, it might be weird, but it served its purpose. It stripped Ichigo down to nothing to remind us why he's the hero. It wasn't about the powers, it was about the resolve. And as the screen fades to black, we're left with a restored Ichigo, a united Soul Society, and the looming threat of the final war. The 1,000-year blood war is just around the corner, waiting to burn everything to the ground. But for now, the strawberry is back, and the drip is immaculate. We waited 10 long years. We survived the dark ages of anime where CGI looked like a PS2 cutscene and filler arcs were longer than the actual plot. We survived the memes about Bleach being the flop of the big three, the cancellation, the rushed manga ending that had Kubo drawing backgrounds consistently purely of the color white because his shoulders were falling off. But then, in the year of our Lord 2022, the clouds parted. The Strawberry theme song played, and Peria dropped the 1,000-year Blood War anime, and let me tell you, this isn't just an adaptation, it's an apology letter written in 4K resolution with a budget of yes. We enter the final arc not with a whimper, but with a declaration of war that shattered the internet. The aesthetic change is immediate. Gone are the flat colors of the 2000s. We are now in the era of cinematic lighting, remixing the soundtrack to sound like a holy choir of violence and making every single frame look like it belongs in a museum. The enemy this time? The Quincy, the Vandenreich. Basically, imagine if the Soul Reapers were samurais, and Arankars were Spanish matadors, and the Quincy's were militarized German architects with a penchant for blue fire and stealing your lunch money. They are led by Yuhaba, the king of the Quincy's, a man with a mustache so majestic that it commands its own gravitational pull, who wakes up after a 1,000-year nap and chooses absolute violence. The first invasion is a slaughter. It's not a battle, it's pest control service. And the Soul Reapers are the pests. We watch in horror as the captains, the people that we spent 300 episodes glazing as the strongest beings in existence, get absolutely cooked. Byakuya Kochiki gets slammed into a wall and has his Bankai stolen. Hitsugaya has his Bankai stolen, and Soifun gets her Bankai stolen, and the Quincy's have medallions that literally are just Control X, Control V with your ultimate move, turning the meta completely upside down. It is terrifying. It's the red wedding of anime. We see Sasakibe, the lieutenant that we didn't even know existed, get impaled, which enrages head captain Yamamoto. And this is the moment. The old man steps onto the battlefield. He is furious. He is the sun. He activates Zanka no Tachi, a bankai so hot that it threatens to evaporate the entire Soul Society just by existing. The visuals here are peak fiction. Flames that don't just burn, but erase existence. Skeletons rising from the ground, the screen turning into a charcoal drawing. Yamamoto kills the Quincy King, or so we thought, because Bleach loves a bait and switch. It was a clone. The real Yuhaba steps out of the shadows and steals the old man's bankai, cutting him in half. The strongest Shinigami in history dies standing up. It's a moment of pure despair that signals the end of the old generation and tells Ichigo Kurosaki, "You're up, kid." But Ichigo, he's going through it. His sword is broken, he's depressed, and he gets sent to the royal palace to meet Squad Zero, the 5 people who are supposedly stronger than the entire Gotei 13 combined. We get a training montage that involves getting healed in a hot spring by a guy with a pompadour and eating food cooked by a giant lady, but the real juice is the everything but the rain flashback. We finally get the lore drop that we've been waiting for. Ichigo isn't just a mix, he is the entire smoothie. His dad was a captain, his mom was a Quincy. He is human, Shinigami, Hollow, and Quincy, and the revelation that old man Zangetsu wasn't his sword, but the manifestation of his Quincy powers, basically Yuhaba from 1,000 years ago, hits like a truck. Ichigo has to say goodbye to the old man to forge his true Zanpakuto. The scene where he pulls the dual blades out of the fire while number 1 plays, remixed with even more hype, is the moment the he is him allegations were proven true. The drip is immaculate, the confidence is back, and the strawberry is ripe. Meanwhile, in the trenches of the Soul Society, we get the fight that broke the fandom, Kenpachi Zaraki versus Retsu Unohana. We find out that Unohana, the nice healer lady who smiles politely, is actually the first Kenpachi. The most bloodthirsty criminal in history who learned healing magic just so that she could heal her opponents and kill them repeatedly. She fights Zaraki in a dark, infinite void of blood to unlock his true potential. It's violent, it's beautiful, and it is tragic. She kills him and revives him hundreds of times until he finally breaks his mental limiters, leading to her death as she passes the torch and the name to him. It's the most twisted love story ever told, ending with Zaraki finally hearing his sword speak. Then comes the second invasion, aka the separation. The Quincy's come back and they replaced the Soul Society's sky with a literal city. It's inverted, it's gorgeous, and this time the Shinigami aren't playing fair. They took pills to hollowfy their bankais to get them back. Don't ask about the science, just vibe with it. We get the glow-ups. Sajin Komamura rips his own heart out to become a human for a few minutes of immortality, defeating Bombietta in a tragic sacrifice that turns him into a literal dog. Renji Aburai, the man who took L's for a decade, reveals his true bankai, Su Zabimaru, and absolutely destroys Masked and Masculine, a wrestler who fights with the power of cheering. Renji calls him a villain and vaporizes him, effectively beating the jobber allegations forever. But the peak, the absolute cinema, Rukia Kuchiki. She fights as not the Quincy of Fear, is a guy who looks like a Marilyn Manson music video. He turns into a giant gore monster, but Rukia unveils her true bankai, Haka no Togame. She doesn't just freeze things, she lowers her own body temperature to absolute 0. The screen turns white, the music stops, and she freezes the concept of fear itself. It is the most beautiful bankai revealed in the series, cementing her as the Ice Queen that we always knew that she was. And just when you think it can't get crazier, Kenpachi arrives to fight Gremi Thomio, a kid who can turn imagination into reality. Gremi imagines guns, missiles, water, and finally a giant meteor to destroy the Seirete. Kenpachi, he just hits the meteor really hard. He cuts through space, he cuts through imagination, he cuts through the plot itself. It is the most Kenpachi thing to ever happen. And let's talk about the anime original content because this is where the 1,000-Year Blood War ascends. The manga was rushed, we know this, but the anime? Oh, the anime said, we got you. We extended the fights, we get more lore, and in the Core 2 finale, we finally see Squad Zero stand on business. In the manga, they got off-screened, but in the anime, Senjumaru Shutara activates her bankai, and it shakes the 3 worlds. She weaves a tapestry of fate that traps the elite Quincy's, proving that the Royal Guard aren't frauds. The animation during this sequence is so high quality that it probably melted the servers at Crunchyroll. We see Yhwach ascend to the Soul King's palace, the almighty eyes opening, signaling the beginning of the end. As we stand here in the present, watching the conflict unfold, Bleach has proven that it wasn't just nostalgia bait, it was a promise kept. We're watching the conclusion of an era, seeing Tite Kubo's uncompromised vision come to life with a level of care and style that most series only dream of. The pacing is breathless, the battles are brutal, and the drip is undeniable. We're witnessing the battle of a world and the birth of a new one. And as Ichigo charges up into the sky to confront Yhwach, we're all reminded of one simple fact. You can ban the anime, you can cancel the manga, but you can never, ever crush the soul. Bleach is back, baby, and it's never looked this good.